Hi, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Proud to live in the greatest country in the world. Unfiltered opinions, no PC discussion here. Agree, disagree, hate it, love it, it's all good. Sit back and enjoy some unfiltered commentary. We discuss politics, culture, interviews, and more. Your comments are always welcome. Please help the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. And as always, thanks for your support. Let's show you a map here that I think is pretty much the political layout if we try to go our separate ways ideology-wise. Granted, for somebody puts in the comments, yes, I realize that all the red states in the middle, there's social justice warriors and progressives and leftists that live there. And same with the blue areas. There's a very conservative people. Like to give you an idea, if you follow my cursor, I live right here in Binghamton, New York, just above the Pennsylvania line, in between, right in the middle of New York and Pennsylvania border. Yes, there's a lot of conservative constitutions like myself that live in this area, but therein lies the problem. If you did any research, you look back and try to find out some stories concerning the Revolutionary War, what happened to the Tories, what happened to the Loyalists in the U.S. Even though they were Americans, they either grew up here or were born here, went back to England, and it was a disaster for them. It was a disaster for them. They couldn't live under the new United States. They refused. Or they were pushed out, one of the two, which would probably happen given where I live in New York. Now, looking at this map, I think if there was not what I would call a ground war, in other words, armies, people shooting at each other, there might be some rioting, a lot of demonstrating, but nothing like the Civil War at all. I think slowly what it would evolve into is that right here in Ohio, Michigan, northern Indiana, northern Illinois, western Iowa, Wisconsin, and eastern Minnesota, everything through here would end up in a red area. Same goes for eastern Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia, and South Carolina. I think this area in here would end up in the red area, so to speak, if the states actually split up. I think they would try to keep the borders the best they could. Now, this is just a scenario. This is just goofing around. I think they would try to keep the state borders the best they could. So basically what it come down to is this area would be the blue area, and then we go out west here. I'm not sure about Arizona. We'd probably have to have some kind of connection. When I say we, I mean the red states to the Pacific Ocean. So I think basically Nevada and California would be in that area. And Oregon and Washington, that's a little iffy. It only shows the coast on this map, which is realistic for ideology purposes for a vast majority of the people. But I think that Oregon and Washington would side with California and Nevada. And I think the red states would push hard to get a opening here into this Pacific Ocean. And I think that's the way it would end up if it was a peaceful separation, or what they call a amicable divorce. And I think over time what would happen was there'd be a lot of turmoil, of course. There'd be great population shifts. I know myself personally. Like I said, I live right here in upstate, just across the border in upstate New York. There's no way I could live under an uncontrolled progressive and leftist country. There's no way I could do it. It's tough enough living in New York as it is. And under the U.S. Constitution, it's a huge burden. That's why people are moving out of the Northeast in droves. Or their population is increasing much less than the rest of the states. That's why you're going to see this next census. It's going to be tough for the progressive states, especially California. But I think what happened over time is basically this whole area here, all the way around through here, would all be red. And I think over time, and because it has to be that way, because history, this is my opinion, history has bore this out dozens and dozens of times. Very heavy social programmed, socialist type countries always implode. It always ends up badly. They tried socialism 42 times, I think it was, and every single one of them has turned out into a disaster. And as that, the Northeast from basically right here north, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and all the way through New England, would eventually start collapsing economically. Now you're going to say, well, John, the center of finances in the United States is Wall Street in Manhattan. Well, that's true. But with today's technology, things change. And those of you snobs out there that think, well, you know, those farmers out in the Midwest and those backwards people in the South, they'd never be able to develop the commerce that we have and the infrastructure and, you know, bullshit. It's plain old bullshit. That's just prejudice on your part. And that's part of the problem with the leftists and progressives. They are prejudiced and racist, too, on top of it. And you're going to see a big migration if this happens. This is just a what-if deal. And I think eventually what would happen is the Northeast would slowly collapse up economically, and slowly but surely they would rejoin the red states, want to form a union again, which would leave the West Coast as the holdout, and Hawaii, of course, as the holdout. And I think over time, it would slowly but surely, might take a generation, maybe 10, 15, 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, to eventually that you wouldn't even know there were two different countries and they would end up being back together again. So if this happened, we'll say a year from now, and the vast migrations, no land army, no wars, I think in about 30 years or so, it would all come back again and be the United States. I think the constitutionalists in the end will win, not because they're better people, it's because the Constitution is the thing that holds everything together. It's the laws. It's the foundation for what we build everything on. And once you throw that away, we have a unique Constitution, and it's served us well. And I don't think that the progressives and leftists could make it. I really don't think so. So that's just my opinion. I think what would happen with a non-army civil war, more of a, we'll call it a political, social civil war. I think, like I said, Ohio and everything this way would end up being red. Along the coast here would be red as well. And southern Arizona to the Pacific would be red. And there would be two sides of the United States. There would be what I'll call progressive states / socialist states. And the red states would be the constitutionalist, U.S. constitutional states. And I think over time, their economies would collapse. And they would slowly come back and join what I call the United States. The constitutionalists are the United States. Let's take that. For all this talk about Texas seceding and all that stuff, all right, fine. They're not seceding. They're staying in the United States. It's the leftists that are going off the cliff. So let's make that clear. Anyway, folks, that's just something to think about for fun. In conclusion, is the United States, is the USA breaking apart? In a lot of ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no. And what I mean by that, that's not a politician's answer. The ideology is growing farther and farther apart, mostly by the left. Progressives and leftists have gone so far left that they've left the moderate Democrats, the reasonable ones, the ones that are good faith negotiator on laws, on things to do for our people. They want to negotiate in good faith, are being left behind, and a lot of them are joining the progressives because they don't feel they have anywhere else to go. Or some of them are wandering over as independents, maybe Republicans. And that ideology is getting farther and farther apart. It will eventually destroy itself. The progressives and leftists always do in the end, economically and socially. But is it really falling apart? I don't know. I really don't. And no, in a way, is we're still all Americans. And there's a small percent, I'll say 10, 15, 20% of these progressives that hate the United States. They hate everything it stands for. They hate the Constitution. They hate all of it. Can the rest of the Democrats and the people that are on the conservative side get together and push them out? We'll have to see. If they don't, they will accumulate more and more power and more authority, i.e. the U.S. Senate races in January. And they're both in Georgia by a weird coincidence. There's so much on the line here for the future of our country there. I pray. You can't use the F word here on YouTube, and it's not the F word you're thinking of. It's the FRAUD F word. Being the algorithm will pick it up. I pray there isn't what I'll call the anomalies and extreme oddities in the election results in Georgia. I pray that's not true, or it might really, truly spark a civil war, at least a political and social one. I don't believe there's going to be a standing army civil war. Not that we're any better than anybody else or any better than any countries that's had their civil wars. We had ours. 600,000 people died. That would be 6 million by today's population percent. 6 million. Take what's died of COVID and multiply it times 30. That's what died in the Civil War. And economies wrecked, families ruined, people's lives shattered, arms and legs missing, eyes missing, you name it. It was horrendous. So I don't think it's going to be that. But if the firewall in the Senate doesn't hold, I thought we had the Supreme Court to defend the Constitution. They took the coward's way out by not hearing this case. I don't think the people that in Texas would have won, but I think the people would have thought it got a fair shake. And even if it got a fair shake and you lost, you're still greatly disappointed or madder than hell, but you eventually get over it. But now they feel they were cheated, just like other things that you can't mention here on YouTube. They think they were cheated out of their chance to present their case to the Supreme Court. And that's worse, because you never get over that. You never get over the fact you were cheated. So we're going to see what happens. I think a lot depends on what direction we go to, how quickly in the Senate races, like I said. Well, anyway, folks, that's my thoughts. A little long-winded. I normally don't make episodes this long, but this is a very interesting and very timely topic. And not just for entertainment purposes here on YouTube, but it's really important for the future of the country. I'm 64 years old. It's not going to affect me that much for the rest of my life, but I have 2 kids. I have 1 granddaughter. I have 2 nephews. What about their kids and their kids and their kids? And that's something young people don't worry about now. They don't worry about future generations or even their future. It's always what's read about right now. What about tomorrow? What about today? No, you have to think about long term. What's best for everyone. And life is tough, and we do the best we can. So we're going to have to find out. It takes a pretty thick carpet for the kind of praying we're going to need to hopefully get through this. But anyway, folks, there it is. And as always, until next time, goodbye and good luck.